Hi, I'm Carmen Gloria Pérez, and this is the Permanent Rain Press.
Hi everyone, it's Chloe with the Permanent Rain Press, and today I'm so thrilled to be joined by Carmen Gloria Perez. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good, thank you for asking. We have so much to unpack with Young Royals, but before we dive into the show and Linda, I wanted to talk about your very interesting background because you did 6 years of active duty in the US Army as a finance specialist. So tell me a bit about your time overseas and what you took away from your duration of service.
Well, for somebody like myself that, we didn't have a lot of money, nobody in my family had traveled overseas. I thought it was a really great experience on many levels. I was able to become independent. I was 17 years old when I joined the Army. So, right after high school, and I trained, you do your basic training, which is, it was 2 months. And then you do advanced training, which is whatever job you're going to do, which mine was finance. And then right before you graduate, you can request, you have like a top three choices of places where you would like to be stationed at. And I've always wanted to go to Europe. So I put Germany was my first choice and I got it. So yeah, I was stationed in Germany and I loved it. And then when I was about to leave, I could have come back to the States and then I, of course, requested South Korea because I knew there were a lot of military bases there. And I have two friends that went to Korea. So then I got South Korea. So I was stationed like in a base called Camp Casey, which is in Tonduchon, which is 8 miles south of the demilitarized zone. So I was like really close to the border between North and South Korea. So it was really interesting being there and I loved it. I love Korean barbecue is like my favorite food. so so yeah, it was just I think for somebody from my background, it was a great experience. And what I took away from it is that, it was teamwork, it was all about teamwork. Being in the military is always teamwork, leadership, and working hard. There's no whining in the Army. So that's what I got from the military.
And it's safe to say that you felt inspired because after that, you went on to study government and international politics at university, right?
Totally. I actually, because, when my last duty station was in Washington, D.C., and there I had a security clearance where I was working at the Pentagon. And, based on like all my work experience, I could have gotten a really great position in the government. And I was actually thinking working for the Department of State. And, so yeah, and then I thought, okay, I'm going to major in international politics, work for the Department of State, work for Madeleine Albright. I had this whole plan. And then, of course, I took an acting workshop for fun, and then I ended up totally changing everything. So that's how life works out sometimes, right?
Yeah, that's kind of funny because like you mentioned, you have something super set and you're like, okay, I'm gonna go do this. And then one acting workshop kind of change your life and change your viewpoint. But I'm sure at the back of your mind, you still have like that interest in politics and government.
Totally. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I still read a lot about what's going on in the world. I like to know, and yeah, it's something that, I maybe will get into later, but I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm very interested for sure.
Yeah, right now arts focused. Something I
Yeah.
found that was really cool in the archives, you got to meet and speak with J.K. Simmons at a veterans event earlier on in your
Oh, you
career.
saw that.
Was that
Yeah.
like a very starstruck moment for you?
Oh, he was so cool. He was the coolest man. I think he said his dad was in the military. Was it a veteran? So he was like very connected to veterans and he was like thanking me for my service. And we had a long conversation actually. He was super cool. And then of course I was like, can we take a picture? Because
Yeah, the
he's
fangirl inside was like, can we take a photo? I need something to keep this memory. But J.K. Simmons, for those watching this interview, of course, he was in shows like The Closer, the Spider-Man franchise we all know him from. But let's dive into Young Royals now and talk about Linda. I know in the callback you got to do a chemistry test or scene opposite Omar Rudberg, who ended up starring as your son Simon. Do you remember which scene that was?
I think there were two scenes, but the one scene I remember, I think it was the one where Linda finds the receipt, the invoice for Hilerska. It was like 5,000 crowns, and it's like, what is this? And I'm kind of like confronting him, like, what do you know, where's this money? Like, well, how did you think you were going to pay for this? It was slightly different. The scene was a very different, or not very different. It was almost the same, but what was funny is that, Omar and I, we were doing the scene and then we tried a few different things. And there was one moment where he was looking at me like he was about to like laugh. And we both just started cracking up. And it was like, I mean, because we connected right away. It was so cool. I love him. Like, so I think obviously that showed across, it came across on the camera because I got the part. So that was really nice.
You remember what the second scene was, or was it one that maybe didn't make it into the
I'm not
final
sure.
cut?
I just remember there was a scene that was not confrontational. It was a little more tender. I just can't remember what it was, So I just remember that it wasn't always like, oh, what is this? I wasn't confronting him the whole time. So there must have been another scene because I remember being like a little more like closer to him and having more, a more mother and son connection.
Whatever it is, it worked beautifully. Obviously, both of you two
Yeah.
were cast in these roles. When you were given the character description, for Linda, maybe even before, or maybe after you were cast, like, was much of her background already set? What were you told about her and her relationship with her children?
I know that so Linda, what I knew is that she had left their father because he had an alcohol problem. And I wanted to protect the kids from the father, to get them away from the negativity, because I'm all about protecting my kids and standing up for the kids. So I knew that much. And I also knew that Linda works a lot. She was working like double shifts and like nights and days and 7 days a week, some weeks, so I knew that as well. And then the Spanish stuff came, because Omar is of Hispanic background too. So that also was kind of like I had to be Hispanic, otherwise it probably wouldn't work.
Were you really excited to bring in the Spanish side because you have Puerto Rican roots, and then anytime I think you can bring that heritage into your character is something special?
Oh, yeah, I loved it. I mean, it was the first time I could really like almost all of it can be in Spanish. Because I've done a role before, but I was doing more English with a heavy accent. So it was great. It kind of came naturally because we tried it out at the audition actually with Erika. So I auditioned for Erika, which is one of the directors. And we also talked about later on, we had talked about how natural it is that, when people come from their native country and they move into a new country, normally at home, they speak with what's comfortable to them, so usually we speak our native language. So it just came naturally, like of course she will speak Spanish to the kids. And like that happened to me. When I was born in New York, my parents only spoke Spanish in the house, so I wanted to bring that. And a lot of friends I know that came from somewhere else, they always speak their native language at home. So yeah, it just came very natural.
It's nice that the writers and the directors are really flexible and making sure that that was a part of the show. Before we go further on, spoiler warning for all those watching, though I'm sure you've already caught up on season 1. We will be speaking about it, so make sure you are caught up on episodes 1 through 6. Now, for you, Carmen, which was your favorite scene to be a part of and why?
Oh, well, probably all the scenes, right? But I really loved when, I'm trying to comfort Simon, when Linda was trying to comfort him because he had just found out that he's all over the news. And so that's one of my favorites. Another favorite, I really enjoyed the family situation when we're eating together and these scenes, like everything that felt like you're really in a real home. Because I think what they did a great job at making sure it felt like a real home. And we really felt like it was home. And I love the scene where we were playing cards with Inti, with Ayub. I mean, and we were playing cards and having fun and laughing, and it felt so real. We were just having fun, and I love those scenes. You know, the very intimate sort of, yeah. That's what I'm. You know what I mean?
Yeah, in terms of the house set, so what was that like? Was there an actual kind of like trailer park house that you did some? I know that there were some exterior scenes done there, but in terms of the place itself, like was it multiple rooms strung together? Was it on a sound stage?
No, it was an apartment, a real apartment. So we had it from a Monday through Friday. So we shot all our scenes that whole week. Yeah.
That's a
And
really
it was
interesting
really
insight
cozy.
because I guess they had to the production had to rent the place out, right? So it's kind of like probably for you like bam, 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 like all of those family scenes.
Yeah, yeah. Which was great because we got to really connect, you know. I mean, we connected right away, but it was definitely like we were in close quarters, like always in each other's, you know, because it was a small apartment and it was super nice. It was like, it felt like a real home.
I'm sure when you also factor in the crew members on set, yeah, it definitely was packed in there.
Totally. It was packed.
So what is Linda's job? Like, were you given it? Because I've seen the show multiple times now, and I don't know if it was ever explicitly said what she does for work.
She is sort of not a nurse, but she works as a sort of advisor to youth for like problems they might have. You know, it's like an advisor nurse. I don't know. There was a word for it in Swedish, and I remember it. It's like, yeah, she's like the nurse that kind of advises the youth, the especially girls.
Okay,
Yeah,
so kind of like counseling work, something
yeah,
like
yeah,
that,
like counseling
counselor.
work. Yeah.
That's
Which
actually a
is
really,
explains a lot of why
yeah.
I'm doing with the kids, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to talk about a few other scenes that you were in to maybe get your insights or commentary. So the first would be the Parents' Day, because you actually got to go to the Halerska set and interact with more of the cast. Was that where Edvin had introduced himself to you initially?
No, he actually the first day I shot, I think we were he oh no, the first day I arrived, I can't remember what we were shooting, but he came to the dressing, not to the dressing room, the makeup room. And I thought that was so cool because, you know, I thought I was just going to see the lead actor like later, but he actually like, I thought it was very special that he came, you know, went out of his way to come and say hi. Hey, I'm playing Wilhelm. Nice to meet you. And, you know, he was just so nice and so gracious. I love that guy.
And I think it's so, like you mentioned, so nice and gracious when like the lead character takes the initiative to do that because it kind of sets the tone for the rest of the cast and what's going on in the production. So I love that he did that, and hopefully you'll get to interact a bit more in the second season. And we'll talk about maybe wish list items. But in terms of Parents' Day, like being there on that set, you also got to kind of do that church choir scene. What was that like for you?
Oh, I was like teary eyed. I'm like, that's my boy. You know, like, you know, anytime there was a scene where seeing like my kids, like for example, in the Lucia and my boy singing in the choir, like I was the mom. Like I totally was like really like so emotional and so like, oh, he's my boy has such a beautiful voice and just, you know, and actually in reality, that was my first time seeing him singing and I was impressed. And of course I was like crying. I'm like, oh my God, okay, let me act normal here.
Yeah, you're definitely so proud parent in both of those moments. Frida walking down with the candle crown. I know she said that she was actually really nervous to do that scene, and there were crew members like with fire extinguishers just in case something went wrong.
You know, I was nervous too. And that was actually, by the way, that was one of my other favorite scenes too, that I was not a part of. It was just because it was my first time seeing a Santa Lucia ceremony, because I live in Norway and I'm American. So this is more of a Swedish tradition. So I was like, oh, this is so beautiful. And then I'm like, is that real fire on your head? Oh my God. And like, I was being protected too. I'm like, I will save you if something happens, you know, the whole time I'm like, trying to be like in character, but also like about to jump if she needs help, you know? So that was pretty fun. Yeah.
Luckily, it did all go smoothly. With the Lucia scene, that's also where it's comes to light that Simon has been seeing Micke behind Sarah and Linda's back. So as Linda, like, what do you think she was feeling in that moment? Because she didn't really, speak up against it. She's not necessarily the same like Sarah, who's obviously a bit more impulsive in her
Mhm.
speech and saying like, why did you kind of do this?
I was, of course, I felt a little, because, the whole thing we had from the beginning is that our family doesn't lie to each other and we don't keep secrets. And we had talked about that before. I think it was even in the script somewhere at some point. And so I felt a little like betrayed that he had been seeing Mikel behind our back. But I'm also Linda, not me, but Linda was also very like, she understands the social norm of like, you can't cause drama in a public place. So she kept it all in and she was trying to be very, gracious as well and keep it all in. And then she was going to confront Simon later or ask him, so it was interesting because Sarah is the one that would say something, of course, always. And that's why, Linda didn't say anything. And I wanted to keep it that way. It was written that way. And I wanted to keep it that way because I'm like, yeah, she wouldn't cause drama there. It would be like later she would privately say, hey, why didn't you tell us?
And then, of course, after that, she doesn't really get the opportunity because we all know what happens with the video leak. And I think, as any good mother, she kind of wants to take a step back from one piece of drama and focus on like the matter at hand and what's going on with Simon. There was the dinner scene in episode 6 where Sarah is upset about the lack of table manners. She says she's applying for a grant to live at Halerska next year. That was such a strong scene. What do you remember from that day, kind of those emotions heading into it? Because it really comes to a confrontation between Sarah and kind of her being upset at her mother.
Yeah, I know that she like Linda's understanding because she understands that Sarah wants to move up in the world, and I can relate to that because I grew up in poverty as well, so I was trying to connect with how she was feeling, and I think Linda does well. The reason why she works so many hours is because she wants to provide, and so she was a little hurt because of course she's like, I'm doing my best, like, but at the same time it's like, okay, I have to talk to her about this, like, is there something else going on that she's not telling us? But then Simone chooses to go talk to her, and what I felt based on how it was written is that Linda, because she works so many hours and they are alone a lot. So I kind of let Simon take a little bit of the slack when I'm not around, which is why he kind of takes over the conversation and stuff like that. It's not like a choice that Linda's like, oh, let him take care of it. It's not like that. It's more like, oh, I think this one, if he wants to talk to her, she might understand him a little bit better at the moment. But then I was going to approach her later as well, so yeah.
Yeah, I love that your insight behind that because it's something I wanted to touch upon, which is that Linda is seen as such a devoted mother compared to the other parental figures we meet because she checks in on her children, she asks them about their day. But in terms of being passive, like your head writer, Lisa Ambjörn, also brought this up in an Instagram live, the fact that she sometimes lets Simon take the lead on some of these difficult conversations with Sarah instead of doing them herself. And that could be a bit of a struggle between her long hours, like being able to care for and provide for her children, but also connect with them.
Yeah, and that's what happens, when the parents are working too many hours and they don't get to spend that much time with the kids. I think that is, that can happen easily. Um, but I felt like also, it's always up and down because Sarah has her moments and I just let her, and she always comes back and it's like, I love you, mom, later on. So at least that's what I got, that it's up and down, and they're teenagers. So they have their moods. And I was just letting them have their journey and not be on her all the time, every time she snaps, because in reality, like, we all snapped when we were teenagers, right? So I was just trying to be like, And, you know, and I always felt like, you know, they go through so much chaos. They have a dad that drinks too much, and they have chaos as teenagers, chaos at school because they're like kind of the outsiders. So what Linda, I felt like she wanted to always have is like the Zen space when they come back home, you know? So I don't want to be like, oh, why did you say that? And then, you know, like I felt like Linda's not that person. But yeah, it might make her seem like she maybe is a little slack or too soft sometimes, but I felt like there is a balance somewhere. So she's better at conversing with the kids after the fact, after they've had their moments, is what I thought.
Yeah, I think it's nice that you kind of created that parenting style for her because you kind of had in mind what you wanted to see, and maybe you worked with the writers or directors a bit on that, and the fact that she wants to give them space as teenagers to experience life, but there's also that fine line between obviously providing some guidance, which you said some of it might happen off screen, like these conversations that she has with her children. Now, did you do any research in terms of a parent having a child on the spectrum or one who identifies as LGBTQ, and just the challenges that the parent might face, especially with Linda going at it by herself?
I did. I did a lot. I read a lot about it and I did research, but I also didn't want to make it about that necessarily. I wanted Linda is just accepting and loving and supportive no matter what. And is not, you know, she wants Simon to be happy, whether he's in love with a boy, a girl, a non-binary, like it didn't matter. She just wants her boy to be happy. And if she's happy with Wilhelm, you know, like he has this little smile on his face when he talks about the prince, then she wants to, you know, just be supportive, and she's just happy that he's happy, you know. So I didn't want it to be about the sexuality or, but of course, because you know I got bullied for a brief period as well for other reasons, and people get bullied for multiple reasons. If you whether you're LGBTQ or you're one color or one, you know, whatever. And so I wanted that to be not, you know, not just about that, but just she's just supportive. Does that make sense? Or yeah.
Yeah, I do think that that makes perfect sense. And I like with the show that both Simon's sexuality and both Sarah with her Asperger's and ADHD, like that's not the central focal point of the show. There's so many more layers to the characters to expand upon. And the one thing that it does, I think, serve a purpose is it might have played a large part in their upbringing and their life at home, like what kind of maybe happened with Micke. You mentioned this a bit earlier, but working with Omar and Frida, I wanted to cycle back there because you love them so much. Tell me about getting to know one another in between the takes. Like, what were those conversations like? Was it immediately like just wanting to know how they grew up? Maybe they were curious about you and your background.
Yeah, so yeah, we connected right away, of course, and we connected on so many levels. And I think I was asking Omar where he was from, and like both of them are close to their parents, and it says a lot about their personalities. Like they're so nice and such great people. Like I was like, wow, like I don't remember being that cool and that awesome when I was that age. Like I was all a little more insecure and whatever. I don't know. They were just and so talented. I remember like, Omar had told me he was from Venezuela. He came when I think he was 6 with his mom and to Sweden and that he had been doing music since he was 14. He left the house and I'm like, wow, really? 14? Like you're like independent kid. And then what moved me so much is that they really could have been my kids. Like I love music. I've actually dabbled around in music and songwriting. And then Omar's like has this amazing voice and is a great songwriter. And I'm like, wow, he really could have been my kid, And we were talking about that and his love of music and the arts, and acting, how he had never acted before and, his journey into it. And then Frida too. I mean, she just kept impressing me. I saw her drawing one day and I'm like, oh my God, this caricature. And I'm like, oh my God, it's so cool. And then she shows me a whole notebook of all these characters and it's all her imagination. She had this amazing imagination. So it's like and I also love drawing and painting. So it was like, oh, she could have been my kid too. Like, and I was just like, I mean, I was like crying half the time, not crying, but just emotional, because I'm like, wow, it's just like, we really have so much in common. And I think she had been like in Barcelona right before. And then she had, and then I was asking her about her tattoo. And then it's like, oh, for my favorite movie, Donnie Darko. And I'm like, I'm going to watch the movie now. So when I came back, I watched the movie again. I had seen it a long time ago. And, it's just, they just inspire me. Like, even though they're younger, they inspired me on so many levels and many other ways that, yeah, I just loved working with them.
I'm so happy to hear that. Like, just hearing you speak about them warms my heart, because I think it's so nice when you're able to work on a project where you just get along so well, especially with people who star as your on-screen children. And they are both so talented. This is like both of their debut kind of acting projects. So I'm sure you think that they have a bright career ahead of them.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they're so talented. I mean, they made my job so easy. I mean, I was just like, we are a family. Like,
I could just be there, right? And like, I don't even have to like act almost.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we were together and we were family, and it just all worked out. There was not much, like, it just happens, and it was beautiful. Like, I had never been in that environment before. I never played a role like this before. So it was really special to me, and special that they're so awesome,
Well, hopefully more good times, but also probably a bit more drama to come. Season 2 was announced. I know fans were awaiting anxiously since July 1st, essentially. So tell me
Right.
about when that renewal was finally out into the world, and what might you like to see or explore with Linda?
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, Lisa, the writer, is so talented. I almost don't want to I don't want to say anything, because it's like, she's just brilliant, her storytelling is just wow. Um, the only thing, and I think it was triggered by one of your questions actually, is that maybe I could see Linda maybe standing up to someone, maybe like a class clash, like somebody from the crown versus the lower class, or not lower, middle class, working class, and where we go at it for some reason. And she's standing up because she did stand up for her kids, with their father. She took them away from the father because she didn't want the kids exposed to that. And so I think she's protective of her kids, and she will protect them and fight for them. And so if anybody messes with them at Hilerska, or whether it's the crown or whoever, she will stand up. So it would be interesting to see her being a little like tough sometimes. Maybe not with the kids, but maybe like seeing her being protective. But again, Lisa's the brilliant one. She's the one writing, and I'm not gonna, it's just a character thing.
Yeah, for sure. No, we spoke with Lisa, and she actually wrote the storyline. They actually are in the writer's room prior to even season 1 airing, so they know what they want to unpack. So we will stay tuned, and I'm sure you'll be happy to do whatever is in the scripts for your character. But I love that you mentioned that, because I think that there is this fierce and protective side that we don't get to see too much of in season 1. We see more of the softer side, but it's in there. And with Sarah, she does kind of accuse her mom of, not protecting them from Micke's drugs or booze early on. I think it'd be neat to see more of that family dynamic and work with Leonard Turfelt, who stars as Micke. You got to do the one Lucia scene with him. He was so good in all the scenes that he was in.
Yeah, he's so talented, and he was very nice. Like, we talked for a little while too, while we were waiting in the waiting room. And there was something I was going to say that you mentioned something. And so Sarah, she was mad because I didn't leave him soon enough. But like any adult, you try to work things out. So Linda, what she did is she did try to work it out as long as she could, until she realized that he needed to go get help on his own. And if they continued, it was going to really affect the kids. So, so it lasted longer than maybe it should have in Sarah's eyes. But, as adults, we usually try to work things out and work with people until it just doesn't work out. And then you break up with them. So that was an interesting take, with Sarah being upset about that and saying, no, but we're really trying to work it out first. It's, yeah. Us kids, we see things when we're kids, we see things differently than adults, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think Simon alludes to that when he kind of says, you know, she did take us away, right? She basically raised us. And that's because, you know, it takes a lot of courage and effort to kind of, he's still the father of their children, right? So you kind of want to try. And it did take a lot for, I'm sure, her to move up with the children. Being able to interact, like, do you think that that would be interesting, maybe seeing more of Micke enter in her life, their children's lives, and because he seems to be making a conscious effort.
I thought actually when he came to bring the flowers at the Lucia ceremony, I remember in the moment, just as Linda's thoughts were, oh, that's so sweet. Like he hasn't done that ever. You know, he's actually trying. And I remember thinking like, oh wow, he's never made this much of an effort. He's never bought anyone flowers, you know? And so I remember thinking, oh man, like I wish if he were to do this more often and if he stopped drinking, maybe, but you know, so there is that soft side of Linda that I think deep down she obviously still has some love for him, and because she's the mother, he's the father of their kids. So yeah, it would be interesting to see if they interact or not, for sure.
Things to think about. We'll put that on, we'll write that down, and then I think that there's just so many theories of what could happen in season
Right.
2, and we'll just see if any of these make it into the show. But in terms of Simon and Wilhelm, like where do you think Linda stands on them potentially if they find their way back to each other in the future? Because she's obviously hurt by what Wilhelm did to her son. So where do you
Yeah.
think she's at with them as a potential couple? Like she knows how happy Simon was when he was kind of with Wilhelm.
I mean, of course, Linda believes in love, you know, that's why she stayed with Miguel for so long. I think she wants them to be together, and like, she's sad that Simone is so sad and broken, you know, but I also know that Simone is also strong and he's going to get over it and move on. And then, you know, life will move on and he's going to figure out his way again with, you know, whether it's with a relationship or, you know, you don't need relationships to survive in life. So in that sense, so I think, you know, she's hurt just like Simone because of what happened, but at the same time, she just wants Simone to be happy. So whatever makes him happy, that's what would make Linda happy.
I think that strength, it's like he got that from his mom, obviously. He got
Uh,
that from his mama. I love seeing all the interactions on screen, and I think that I just want to say kudos to you and kudos to the cast, especially that family unit, for making it seem so realistic. Now, the fans of the show are so remarkable. Tell me about what this love has meant to you and what are some memorable messages that you've received?
oh, the fans are the best. I mean, they make my days better because I've never received these many notes with so much love. And so, you know, I just, like, I mean, I get emotional a little bit because, you know, I'm kind of like the adoptive mom on Twitter or something now to some of the kids because you know, some of them have said that I'm kind of like a role model or like a mom figure because they might not have these good relationship with their real moms because they're either gay or trans or whatever. I've gotten several messages, and that means a lot to me. You know, it means a lot that this show has had that kind of impact where that has given kids this confidence to come out or to express themselves, and the fact that I'm a part of it and that I could be like the mommy figure to them is like, it means so much to me. But pretty much that's all. I mean, I've even gotten like adopt me, you know, like please adopt me, you know, and I love that. I'm like, yes, please, I'll adopt anybody, come on. You know, they're just the fans are amazing. I'm grateful for them. Yeah.
I can tell you're so humbled and you're actually on like Twitter a lot, interacting with them, sending people words of encouragement and affirmation. And I think that's what you would think a good mom figure is. So you are the mom of the fandom. I do think that that's a pretty accurate description. And also, I've seen some fan art that you've reposted. There's this one French artist who we will give a shout out to. I think it's Ponyo Papier.
Yeah, no,
Such
so good.
incredible art of you, and then all of like the different characters in the series.
She's amazing. Actually, today, no, yesterday, when I was at an interview and I ordered a print of one of her pictures. So I actually have it here. Like I'm gonna frame it and everything because I'm like, I love it. I've never had fan art like that before. It's beautiful. And she just recently did one with Wilhelm and and Simone, as if they're getting married. And it's like the best. Like she's really talented.
And I love how like elegant it all looks like in her art.
Totally. She's extremely talented. I'm a fan of hers now. So yeah.
It's nice that like you find all these also new up and coming like artists at the same time, because this is a fandom which you've been in like a lot of different productions, but nothing to the same extent in terms of like how passionate they are doing fan art, sending messages every day, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, and I think this role has had the most impact as well. So I think it means a lot to me. And I mean, I've always wanted to work on a show that had that much impact worldwide and on so many levels. I love that it gives kids hope and they can dream to see something bigger and be confident and come out if they have to and express themselves. I love that. I think it means so much to me, you know?
Well, speaking about impact, to work on a show with so many strong, talented female creators between the directors, the writers, the crew, the cast, like what has that meant to you, especially as a fellow filmmaker yourself?
It's, I mean, it's my favorite thing I've worked on because of that. I mean, it starts from like the amazing storytelling from Lisa. She's a brilliant, brilliant writer. And then Rojda comes with her vision and her concepts, and it like makes it look so real. Everything is so real and just connected and everything. And then Erika, I love her. We were like, it was like love at first sight creatively because she was the first person I met, and I just love her. We just clicked, and I think it's also we both came from Norway, so we had like a little special connection, I thought. And they both are such great directors. I mean, they both took like the time and the care and guiding us, and they had their slightly different ways of guiding us, but they were still brilliant. You can see that they wanted to make sure we all were in the same story and that everything really was connected and that we were all connected. And so they always made sure of that. And it was really special. I hadn't seen that kind of care. I mean, I've obviously worked with a lot of people that care, but it was just there was something about the way they worked that I just felt like it was very intimate in some way. It was beautiful. So, and of course, yes, it does inspire me because I'm also writing my scripts. I'm trying to become a better writer. I didn't go to school for writing, so it's just I'm learning on my own. I've read like a million books on it, and so I'm inspired by Lisa as a writer and as a filmmaker. Yeah, it's like they're both brilliant. It's Rojda and Erika. So I'm just honored to be working with people like that.
And seeing it come together from script to screen is obviously it's transformational, because you can see like the amount you mentioned care and effort that they put into the characters and then bringing it to life. And of course that comes with the actors as well. So you should all be really proud of this impact. You talked about being a filmmaker. Your most recent short was Interview with the Vampira. How would you describe your style as a filmmaker? And then just like what do you find yourself inspired by on an everyday basis?
So Interview with the Vampira was so I started this little like production company called House of Experiments, and my style is very experimental. That was sort of a comedy horror project. I shot just over a weekend, and I wanted to submit it to this thing, and I just filmed I did everything myself. I did the camera, I did the editing, I wrote it, and like I did everything, right? And I played both characters. And so, you know, obviously very experimental, so no budget. So, but what I'm doing is I'm learning to become a filmmaker. And so I wear all the hats and I'm trying to see what is my strength as a filmmaker. And so Interview with the Vampira actually just won Best Editing. And that's the funny thing because, thank you, because there have been several short films that I've shown to people, and the compliment I get is, wow, your editing is really great. So so that's the, you know, big compliment, of course. And I really love editing. It's really fun, but I also love being, you know, the actress too. So, but I'm inspired. See, I love these silly sketch comedy things. I love Saturday Night Live. I studied at Second City because I just love sketch comedy characters. And I have a few characters that I work on and I'm gonna film later on. But I also love the other extreme. I love intense drama and dark stuff. And, you know, I'm like kind of like extremes when it comes to stories and filmmaking. So I'm writing one project, feature film that's a little bit darker and totally different. And I like to play around with sort of stories with that kind of question the nature of our reality. You know, what is really happening in the world. And of course, my favorite genre is sci-fi. But sci-fi, that requires usually more money and budget. So I kind of like don't necessarily tap into that just yet. I just read a lot and I watch a lot of sci-fi. But yeah, I guess that's my style is very experimental. Right now I'm exploring a lot of things.
I think that that's nice to kind of dabble in different tones and genres to see what works for you, because you'll never know unless you try it. And I like you mentioned you were like wearing all the hats in that short that you did. So it must have been pretty chaotic. Like you're kind of bouncing back and forth between running behind the camera, seeing if the shot worked okay,
Oh,
and then going back in front.
totally. Well, you know, when people go to film school, they actually have to try wear all the hats at different times. So in one short film and with your classmates, sometimes you're the director, and in another short film, you're gonna be the not the actor, but you'll be like the producer, and then sometimes you'll be the editor. So I knew that from friends of mine that have gone to film school, and I thought, well, I'm gonna have my own version of film school, and I'm just gonna try everything and see what works, you know. So yeah, and I'm learning a lot for sure.
And it was shortlisted for the Italian Horror Fantasy Fest as well. So
Yeah.
hopefully, you know, getting your name out there. But I'm really happy that this short film's doing well for you. Hopefully you mentioned feature film, more to come in the future, but you meant
Oh, and it's also, so there's an app. You can only use the app on iPhones, but there's an app called Hoo Ha Ha, and it's for women in comedy. And so the film is in their Halloween playlist as well. And that Hoo Ha Ha was actually co-founded by Elizabeth Banks, which is a huge actress, and now she's a director as well, and she's one of my favorites. So that's kind of an honor for me too, that it was not too bad where they allowed it to be a part of their Halloween playlist, you know. So that's also very exciting.
that is exciting. And as you mentioned, oh, it's not too bad. Like I think with probably with being an independent film, you're kind of like always thinking, oh, will I, you know, get placement here or get placement here? So that is a huge honor. Saturday Night Live, who is your favorite player on in that cast? Because everyone is so talented. I like
It's so
everyone.
good. Well, I love I know Kate McKinnon, but haven't seen her in the recently. So for some reason, and then there's Keenan,
He is so
and
good. Kenan Thompson,
yeah,
yes.
Thompson. I'm like trying to remember their last name, and of course I love the news, Che and Colin
Yeah,
Joe.
Colin Jost and
Yeah,
Michael Che, yeah.
yeah. I love them doing their news things and how they pick on each other. And I mean, and what's her name? I don't remember. I just know their faces, but I don't know their names right now. Uh,
You know what
oh,
characters she plays?
she's playing. She plays a lot of these politicians, the male politicians. She plays Cuomo, not Cuomo. What's his name? Andrew Cruz. I mean, oh, what's her name? Ah. She just came out with a show too, and I can't remember the name of the show either.
Oh,
Like,
Cecily Strong.
I know. Oh, Cecily Strong is amazing. Oh my gosh, she's so good too. I mean, they're all so great. I mean, you can't get a job there if you're not brilliant, right? Because so I mean, I look up to all of them, and they're an inspiration. I don't tap into politics when it comes to comedy because I'm like, they're too good. I can't do.
You're like, that's their realm. Yeah, you'll leave it to SNL.
Yeah, yeah.
So you are also, you mentioned music, a musician and an author. How do you find time in your career for all of these different outlets?
Well, it's kind of all I do. Like I don't, I'm not a super social person. Like I'm social when I'm out and I have to be around people and I'm fine. But I just love it so much. I love being creative. I have way too many ideas. I wish I had more time or multiple versions of me that were able to do all my ideas. So I'm just constantly like working, like I have ideas, so I have to then put them on paper and then something, a lot of them don't become anything. They don't, they don't get and become anything, but I'm just constantly, I don't know, it makes me happy. Is what makes me the happiest, is creating and building something out of nothing, and just, so that finding time for it is just, I just do it, I guess. I don't really, I don't know how to explain that, I guess. It's just happens, but I also, I had to stop doing several things. I used to do everything and I had to calm down and I'm like, okay, I can't be a singer too because I'd rather act and I'd rather write. So I'm not really pursuing music necessarily. I still do songwriting for other musicians though. So I still help out with that, but pretty much it's just, I just love it. I just can't help it. I get kind of depressed if I'm not creating. Like if I go too long, I get either depressed or edgy. So you don't want me not creating.
I think that that's when you know that you're in the right kind of field, when you're constantly wanting to create and it makes you happy, because when it becomes a chore, that's when you actually have to pull back and take that step back. Until cloning happens, I guess you'll still be dabbling everywhere when you can. We will be talking more about your books, but your most recent EP, Carmen's EP, 2018 EP, The Art of Love, is on Spotify if you want to check it out. You also have a bunch of music videos on YouTube, so if you want to go kind of into the archives for Carmen's pop music, you can do so on YouTube. Do you have a favorite song that you have made over the years?
Oh, they all have their sort of different, like there's certain things about each song that I love or like. I don't love everything I've done, by the way. so,
Like
so
any artist, I think you sometimes look back critically at yourself, but it
yeah,
was fun in
yeah,
the moment and you did it. So
yeah. And I think there's one song, I think it was called "I Love the Way You Kiss," and there's like two versions of it out there, and I think that was my favorite. I don't know why, but maybe that's the one.
there's Carmen's recommendation. If you want to listen to one song, go listen to that song. But I like that you kind of evolved as an artist too, because I was listening to your music and you started more pop, but then in 2018 it kind of became more jazz, and you can still hear the Latin influences, which I think was important for you.
Yeah, and that's the thing, Oh, that's actually an interesting thing. So, because we grew up once we moved to Puerto Rico, there's like, I lived in this barrio and all the schools, like they were so poor, they didn't have arts or music programs or any kind of sports programs. So I didn't get to tap into all these things or explore these things when I was younger. So it came later in life. And I think maybe that's why I was later in life doing pop music and then realized, oh no. And then I realized that my voice sounds better when I'm singing more jazzy stuff. And I mean, that was the compliment I got from a lot of people, is that my voice, especially when I'm doing the deep stuff, is like, oh, people like that. Okay, maybe I'll go in that direction. So that's why I switched, because it was just, I realized that even though pop is great, I love pop music, but for my voice, it wasn't my strength. But yeah, I did it, I guess.
I think it ties back into that experimenting, right? Figuring out what works. You have 3 books in your Kid Astronomy series. So tell me about this love for space and tying in that motivational aspect in your stories.
I've always been fascinated with space. When I was a kid, I would look up and I for some reason thought I was from somewhere else, and just thought I was from another planet, and like daydreams and fantasized so much about space and what was out there. And so, yeah, when I first moved to Norway, I didn't know how much I was going to be working as an actress, and I thought, hey, I've always wanted to write children's books, so I'm gonna like explore this a little bit and see what happens. And of course, space right away came back to me because I'm like, I would like, so the reason why I picked space actually as well is because the STEAM subjects, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, those subjects are the fastest growing jobs now and of the future. And coming from my background, I thought it could be cool to inspire kids to want to be interested in STEAM subjects and in space. And then with that, bring in like positive messages. So I tap into like, Mercury, like being the underdog, and belonging and friendship and love and all of those topics I bring. And there's always positive messages in all the books. And I picked the specific 3 books. I picked those specific subjects for that reason, because Mercury is the planet that nobody ever talks about. Everybody's always talking about, Venus and Mars and Earth and, Neptune. But Mercury, because it's so close to the sun, people just think of it, it's just a rock and nobody can live there and it's too hot in there and whatever. But I thought, well, he's the kind of the underdog. I want to write about him. And then tying in with mythology and how in mythology, Mercury was the messenger. So, I thought, he delivers messages to the other planets. And I just created this story. And then Pluto's story is about him being demoted from being a planet, and he was sad and and finding his way, and he learns that he's a dwarf planet and he finds his new friends and he belongs to a group now. And yeah, and that's just tapping into those positive messages and all of that.
Yeah, I think that you did Pluto, you did Mercury, and you did the moon. So do you have any other books planned?
Other books, I do have. So what I realized too is that I wanted to get deeper. I love writing children's books, but I wanted to write something that goes a little deeper. So the next idea I have is for slightly older children or young adults. But I'm more focused on screenwriting, on my screenplay for film. So I have a lot of ideas. I have like a folder with a ton of ideas for it, but I haven't started writing it yet. And I hope to get into it soon, but yeah, we'll see.
Mentioning about space, you actually toured the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which is cool and something that not everyone gets to do. So how did this come about? Because you've also been to a bunch of NASA social events.
Oh my God, you found that. Okay, yes. So yeah, we have an opportunity in the States. I had an opportunity to apply to be one of the NASA social people that I'm an alumni now, I guess. But so you get to go to either their launches or some of their events when they're about to launch something. And there's a group of us that we get to report sort of with our social media what's going on there. And so I've been to, I think, 3 or 4 maybe. And I love it because it's like we get like the first inside scoop of everything. And we got to go into, the JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and see the mission control and like see where everybody's actually, where the action really happens. And that's fascinating to me. If I had not been doing what I'm doing now or doing international politics, I could have done that.
What is your all-time favorite space-based movie?
Oh, My God. Well, Star Wars has always been my favorites. All of them, even the ones that people don't like. I just love it. I love what Mr. Lucas did with I love that he the way he made it is like nothing looked fresh and clean. Everything was just like used up, and the characters, all these little aliens when they're in other planets, and that was what I fantasized about as a kid. So I always like was connected to those stories.
That's a really good pick. Like the whole franchise, so many incredible films, like you mentioned, even the ones that might not be as critically acclaimed. I'm thinking some of those standalone ones later on. But like to keep a franchise going for so long, there's obviously magic in it.
Yeah, and it has impact again. It definitely, people connect to the stories, because it's not just about space. It's about the stories, about family, about love, about heartbreak. It's so many stories within the stories, and it's beautiful.
Well, I'm excited for whatever form of storytelling comes next for you, whether it's the children's books or the more adult kind of young adult books, screenwriting, feature film, illustration. I just wanted to touch on that briefly because aside from just authoring, like writing the books, you also did the adorable illustrations of the planets. So is drawing something that actively also keeps you kind of grounded and in that creative space?
Totally. I paint sometimes just to relax. It's I have like, I don't know, like 100 paintings. Like some of them are hanging in the house, and some of them are just like in this closet area, and then some of them are like they almost don't fit in the house. But I love painting. That's like my hobby. I did try for a brief moment, like for I think it was 2 years in LA. I was trying to exhibit, and I actually did get to exhibit some of the artwork here and there, and I sold some paintings even, but it was a lot of work, and I felt like I still love filmmaking more. I still love acting more, and but I love painting as a more relaxation, as a Zen thing to do.
Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
it's important to have that aside everything else that you do. I have one more question for your signature question. If you could be any ice cream flavor, which would you be and why?
Ah, well, chocolate is my favorite ever, 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 but I am slightly addicted to the salted caramel by Haagen-Dazs. It's like I discovered that here when I moved to Norway. I had never tried it in the States, and then salted caramel is the best.
I like it. Thank you so much, Carmen, for taking the time to chat. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Chloe.
Make sure to catch Carmen in Young Royals. Season 1 is out now on Netflix. Season 2 is coming in 2022, and we will see you next time.
Yay.